So the levels of corruption from Trudeau and from the Liberal Party in Canada have gotten so bad, they've gotten so dark and so deep that even the corporate media in Canada is reporting on it now. At least parts of the corporate media. I mean, credit to Globe and Mail. They broke this story about a week ago. CSIS reports outline how China targets Canadian politicians, business leaders. CSIS is the Canadian Intelligence Service. And what's even more scandalous than the Chinese interference is Trudeau apparently not being bothered by it, at the very least just letting it go. I mean, why would he stop China? They were trying to get him elected. Says Canadian politicians, officials, and business executives are the prime targets of Chinese government espionage that employs blackmail, bribery, and sexual seduction, with the country even listing the Bank of China in its foreign influence activities. Let's see. Highly classified documents viewed by the Globe paint a picture of a broad Chinese strategy to interfere in Canada's democracy and gain influence over politicians, corporate executives, academics, and vulnerable Chinese Canadians. Here's this. BC MPs unseated with help of Beijing influence on 2021 election, reporting alleges. Former Steveston Richmond East MP Kenny Chiu wasn't surprised by new reports that the 2021 election campaign that unseated him was subject to covert interference from China's former consul in Vancouver. He remains concerned, however, that Canada's lack of response to increasing evidence that Beijing seeks to influence its diaspora communities with social media disinformation campaigns sends a message to authoritarian regimes such as China that, quote, "We are weak, that we will take no action to protect ourselves." Trudeau denies report that Liberals told to drop candidate Han Dong over China ties. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday denied a media report from last week saying his office has been warned by Canada's spy agency to drop a Liberal candidate who is now a member of Parliament because he had Beijing's support. The Chinese government preferred Han Dong, a Chinese Canadian, over another Chinese Canadian Liberal who was passed over in favor of Han, said Global News, citing anonymous security sources in a story posted online. The article said the Canadian Security Intelligence Service urged Trudeau's team to rescind Han's candidacy. Instead, he went on to win a seat for the House of Commons in a Toronto riding in 2019 and was re-elected in 2021. Now, keep in mind, Trudeau has maintained that he didn't know anything about any China interference. He didn't know anything. No, he doesn't know nothing. No, everything's fair. Everything's totally fair. Here from Global News, Canadian intelligence warned PM Trudeau that China covertly funded 2019 election candidates. Canadian intelligence officials have warned Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that China has allegedly been targeting Canada with a vast campaign of foreign interference, which includes funding a clandestine network of at least 11 federal candidates running in the 2019 election, according to global news sources. So 2019 election, 2021 election. And of course, Trudeau didn't know nothing. He didn't know there was anything going on. How could he? He's only the prime minister. He'd only been told about it by the Canadian intelligence services. Or, maybe he liked the interference because it was pro-liberal, because they were trying to help his government win for some reason. Definitely not because China thought that it would serve their goals to have Trudeau in power. Definitely not that. Oh, and how about this one? I mean, it's overwhelming, the level of corruption that is being uncovered here. Just what a joke that Trudeau has turned Canada into. Here, from the Globe and Mail again, CSIS uncovered Chinese plan to donate to Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. Pierre Elliott Trudeau is Justin Trudeau's father, if you're not from Canada, or you just didn't know. China appears to have targeted Justin Trudeau in a foreign influence operation after he became Liberal leader in 2013. Oh, okay, so 2021, 2019, 2013. That's before he even became prime minister. You wonder how a part-time drama teacher, snowboard instructor becomes prime minister of a country? Well, maybe he needs a little bit of help. Maybe a little bit more help than everybody knew. So yeah, China favoring Trudeau, this is going back 10 years now. And this is according to national security source who said Beijing's plan involved donating a significant sum of money to the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. And let's see, they captured a conversation of 2014. Now, in this conversation, they discussed the federal election that was expected to take place in 2015. and the possibility that the Liberals would defeat Stephen Harper's Conservatives and form the next government. The source said that the diplomat instructed Mr. Zhang to donate $1 million to the Trudeau Foundation and told him the Chinese government would reimburse him for the entire amount. So this is going all the way back to 2013. And now that we're seeing it, is anybody really surprised? How about this from the counter-signal? Trudeau financiers under CSIS investigation for ties to China. A Liberal Party financier who attended a Cash for Access fundraiser for Prime Minister Trudeau in 2016 is under investigation for having ties to the Chinese Communist Party. How much coincidence are you willing to buy? All right, how about this? As first reported by Global News, China favored at least 11 candidates in the 2019 election in the Greater Toronto Area. A national security source said that 9 were Liberals and 2 were Conservatives. The Globe is not revealing the identity of the source because they risk prosecution under the Security of Information Act. So it's saying in 2019 they favored 11 candidates, 9 Liberal, 2 Conservative. I suppose it's possible that a couple could have been Conservative, but we're seeing a pretty clear pattern here of not supporting Conservatives. So I'll take that with a grain of salt. Let's see. The CSIS report talked about how China's former consul general in Vancouver boasted in 2021 about how she helped defeat 2 Conservative MPs. The fact that a Chinese diplomat would try to take credit for things that happen is not something that is unseen in diplomatic circles around the world, Mr. Trudeau said. Oh, so Trudeau says there's nothing to worry about, so I guess there's nothing to worry about. And in fact, Trudeau is more worried about how this information got out in the first place. Here, Trudeau deals with China's alleged election tinkering by hunting whistleblower. That's right, the public wasn't supposed to know. That's the real crime here. Let's see, forget being outraged at allegations of China interfering in Canada's last 2 elections. Justin Trudeau wants to know who in CSIS is leaking to the media. Trudeau isn't overly concerned with the crime. He wants to find the people exposing his cover-up. Now, Trudeau says the elections have been absolutely fair and secure, no problem. And in fact, he had those 2 elections as studied. And here, man picked to write report on Chinese election interference. Ran Trudeau Foundation when big donations came in from China. Let's see. One of the defenses Justin Trudeau has used over allegations that China interfered in Canada's election to get him elected is that we have a process to stop this. Beyond pointing to national security agencies, Trudeau has pointed to the task force of top public servants who look for election interference. Let's see. Just 7 months after the 2019 election, that group released its rather vague report. The report on the 2021 election hasn't been released yet, and last week Trudeau said that wasn't up to him. Let's see, there is no date to release this report to the public, but Trudeau wants you to know, quote, that both in the 2019 and the 2021 elections, our election integrity held. Oh, well, that's good to know. I feel much better now. And thank God the guy that he picked to write the report on Chinese election interference may well be implicated in Chinese election interference. And so here comes the perfect ending, the cherry on top of this giant crap sundae. Trudeau warns journalists that questions about China's election interference are what? What are they? What do you think they might possibly be coming from current year Prime Minister, from Mr. Progressive Justin Trudeau, from, the black-faced Prime Minister himself? What does he warn Canadian journalists about? Trudeau warns journalists that questions about China's election interference are racist and should stop. How did we know that was coming? How did we know he was going to use the only trick he's ever had, the only card in the deck that he's ever had? The card that should have been taken away from him when it was discovered that he was running a one-man minstrel show for God knows how long in God knows how many places. And you know what the thing is, though, that he's got nothing else. He has nothing else. He has to keep going back to the same well over and over and over again. It's just like a reflex for him at this point. That's right, Trudeau warns journalists that asking questions about Chinese interference, about the integrity of his government, about his own corruption, the corruption of his party, these questions are, what else could they be? They have to be racist. Oh, and they should stop. Should really stop this right now. It's really inconvenient. Anyway, it says, no one at this point has said Han Dong isn't loyal to Canada. The claim is the Chinese government helped him win an election. For all his words over the years about the importance of a free press, the questions were getting difficult. He wanted them to stop, so he turned to racism. Let's see. Trudeau had been asked several questions about allegations of election interference by the Chinese government. Among the questions that Trudeau didn't give a clear answer on was whether CSIS had warned the Liberal Party in 2019 that they had concerns that now Liberal MP Han Dong had received support from the Chinese consulate in Toronto. And if you don't believe that he knew all about this, you simply should not be allowed to vote at this point. Quote, there are 1.7 million Canadians who proudly trace their origins back to China. Those Canadians should always be welcomed as full Canadians and encouraged to stand for office. So that's not answering the question, and that's retarded. He then addressed the issue of the CSIS warning without saying whether it happened. Quote, in a free democracy, it is not up to unelected security officials to dictate to political parties who can or cannot run. How can anybody not be sick of his bullshit by now? We want to know what you knew and when you knew it. Later in the news conference, CBC reporter Lorenda Redekop asked a straight-up question, seeking to get Trudeau to clarify what he meant. Quote, just a follow-up on that question on CSIS and Han Dong. Are you saying that they didn't warn you? Or were you warned and you chose to dismiss it for those reasons? Just wanted some clarification. One of the things we've seen, unfortunately, over the past few years is a rise in anti-Asian racism linked to the pandemic and concerns being raised or arisen around people's loyalties. Can you imagine Chinese officials, Chinese intelligence seeing this and just laughing their asses off? Just in disbelief over what a fool this man is. Either a fool or how utterly compromised he is. I mean, it really beggars belief. I mean, this should be a scandal the scope of which Canada has never seen before. So it's just racism, of course. But what do you think he was going to say? Give you a real answer? He can't. There is no good side of this. There's no winning in this for Trudeau. All he's got now, at this point, is just the blind loyalty of his most ardent followers. That's it. And I'm not saying that that won't be enough to get him another minority government again. It's hard for me to imagine that Canada has fallen so far, but I suppose it's possible. But, whatever happens in the next election, either way, I'm sure Trudeau's got a great future in China.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China.
Anyway, please subscribe, like, and share. Sharing really helps me out. I thank you for that. I will see you next time.